Namaste and welcome to Daily News Simplified, the what, why, and how of newspaper reading. Today, we would be analyzing the Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper of 1st May 2018. Now, let us begin. Now, we have taken this article from the editorial page on page 9. Now, the author reviews the functioning of the 73rd and the 74th Amendment to the Indian Constitution on the completion of 25 years. And he draws a parallel with another reform that took place 25 years ago, which was the liberalization and privatization of the Indian economy. Now, the author says that the economic reforms of 25 years ago has made India one of the fastest growing economy. But the reform through the 73rd and the 74th Amendment of achieving democratic decentralization has not been successful. Wherein the aim of the 73rd and 74th Amendment or of democratic decentralization was to have an inclusive, responsive, and participatory democracy, which was aimed to deliver economic development and social justice at the grassroots level, wherein the creation of lakhs of self-governing village panchayats and gram sabhas with over 3 million elected representatives mandated to manage local development was a unique democratic experiment in the contemporary world. Now, Part 9 and Part 9A of the Constitution led to the standardization of local self-government in form of elections every 5 years, reservations for historically marginalized communities and women, establishment of State Finance Commission, the creation of district planning committees, among others. But according to the author, despite the introduction of such excellent features, the reforms have failed on many aspects and have not succeeded in enhancing the well-being capabilities at the grassroots level. Now, hopefully up till here you have understood that the author reviews the functioning of the 73rd and the 74th Amendment to the Indian Constitution on the completion of its 25 years, and he draws a parallel with another reform that took place 25 years ago, which was the liberalization, privatization, and the globalization of the Indian economy. However, according to the author, the economic reform have made India one of the fastest growing economy, but the democratic decentralization under the 73rd and the 74th Amendment have not been as successful, wherein the aim of the 73rd and the 74th Amendment was for inclusive, responsive, and participatory democracy so as to deliver economic development and social justice at the grassroots level. And for this, Part 9 and Part 9A were introduced in the Indian Constitution, which intended to lead the standardization of local self-government in India with having 5-year elections, establishment of State Finance Commission, reservation for marginalized communities and women, creation of district planning committees, among other factors. However, according to the author, despite the introduction of such excellent features, the reforms have failed on many aspects and have not succeeded in enhancing the well-being and capabilities at the grassroots level. Now, what we'll do is understand as to what has been the failure, according to the author, of the democratic decentralization under Part 9 and Part 9A of the Indian Constitution. Now, the various failures of local democracy that has been given out by the author, wherein the first one is that panchayat reforms have not received support from the political class or the bureaucracy, wherein states have violated many constitutional features such as postponing local elections, failure to constitute district planning committees, among others. The second failure highlighted by the author is that states continue to ill-define roles and responsibilities of local governance, and thereby states continue to control the funding, functions, and functionaries of local government, thereby eliminating the autonomy of local governance. The third point given by the author is that several states have formed parallel bodies such as the Rural Development Agency in Haryana, which have entered into the functional domain of panchayats and other local bodies, thereby weakening the mandate of local institutions. Now, the increased allocations to the Members of Parliament's Local Area Development Scheme and the similar schemes for MLAs have taken the financial capabilities that should have been shifted to the local bodies. The fifth point highlighted by the author is that there is no mandate to create a district planning committee, with several states such as Gujarat not constituting them, wherein the district planning committees are tasked to draft a district development plan that takes into account planning, environmental conservation, rural-urban integration, among other factors. The sixth point is that recommendations of the State Finance Commission to strengthen resources of local bodies have had limited success. The seventh point is that reservations for historically marginalized communities and women in local governance has not instilled the desired social change. Now, the eighth and the last point, as given by the author, is the expenditure on local self-government as percentage of total as percentage of total public expenditure is only roughly 7% in India as compared to 24% in Europe. Now, hopefully, up till here, you have understood the reasons as given by the author for the failures in local democracy, wherein, according to the author, local self government institutions are in deep disarray and urgent steps are needed to be taken to correct the problems so that the goals of democratic decentralization are achieved. Now, the article and the explanation given in this section becomes relevant with regards to your UPSC syllabus in GS Paper 2, in the governance section, more specifically, devolution of powers and finances up to local levels and challenges therein. Wherein previously questions have been asked in your UPSC mains examination, wherein the first one was asked in GS Paper 2 in 2015, which had asked in absence of well-educated and organized local level government system, panchayats and samitis have remained mainly political institutions and not effective instruments of governance. Critically discuss. And similarly, a question was asked in GS Paper 2 in 2017, which had asked the local self-government system in India has not proved to be effective instrument of governance. Critically examine the statement and give your views to improve the situation, wherein you would be able to answer both these questions with the explanation given in the article and in this section. And so therefore, we move on to the next article. Now I've taken the lead editorial from page 8. Now what this article talks about is the elevation of the Uttarakhand High Court Justice K.M. Joseph as a judge to the Supreme Court, wherein the author has critiqued the objections given by the central government with regards to the elevation of Justice K.M. Joseph. Now the aspects of what this article talks about has already been covered in the DNS of 28th April 2018, wherein a similar article had also critiqued the points of opposition that have been given by the central government. Now the points given in this article are simple to understand and are very much similar to the earlier editorial, and because of this, we would not be covering the lead editorial today, and therefore we move on to the next article. Now we have taken this article from the editorial page on page 8. Now what this article talks about is that Bhagat Singh is being accepted as a nationalist hero from the independence movement in Pakistan, and therefore the author makes the argument that Bhagat Singh is a shared hero between India and Pakistan. But however, the views and ideals of Bhagat Singh are not being reflected in the politics of India and Pakistan, wherein Bhagat Singh stood for egalitarianism, pluralism, and non-sectarian governance based on the idea of inclusive nationalism. Now with regards to this article, what we'll do is understand about Bhagat Singh from the perspective of your upcoming prelims examination. Now Bhagat Singh was born in Lyalpur, Punjab, which is now in Pakistan, in 1907, and he died in Lahore, Pakistan in 1931. Bhagat Singh began the Naujawan Bharat Sabha and later became involved with the Hindustan Socialist Republican Association or Army. Now with regards to this organization, sometimes the word association is used and in certain other cases the word army has been used. Bhagat Singh also organized the Lahore Students' Union with Sukhdev for open legal work among students. The fourth point is the Bhagat Singh with others had plotted to kill the police chief S.P. Scott, who was responsible for the death of Lala Lajpat Rai during the anti-Simon agitation. But however, in a case of mistaken identity, a junior officer named J.P. Saunders was killed. The fifth point is that Bhagat Singh with B.K. Dutt bombed the Central Legislative Assembly in Delhi in 1929 to protest the implementation of the Defence of India Act. Now the major works of Bhagat Singh includes Why I Am an Atheist, Punjab, the Problem of Language and Script, Communal Problem and its Solution, Universal Brotherhood, Indian Perspective, among other. Bhagat Singh also wrote for Kirti, Veer Arjun, Akali and Pratap, which were daily newspapers and magazines. However, he wrote for them under different names. And the eighth and the last point is that Bhagat Singh, along with Rajguru and Sukhdev, were hanged for the death of J.P. Saunders in 1931. Now hopefully up till here you've understood the major highlights and facts with regards to Bhagat Singh, and they become relevant with regards to your upcoming prelims examination, wherein previously questions have been asked on Indian freedom fighters such as Lala Lajpat Rai, Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, C. Rajagopalachari, Surya Sen, among others. And within that context, this section becomes important. And so now with this, we move on to the next article. Now we have taken this article from page 7. Now what this article talks about is that the Power Ministry feels that there is no need to change the electrification definition. Now according to the definition that has been used since 1997, a village is deemed to be electrified if the basic infrastructure such as distribution transformer and distribution lines are in place in the inhabited locality. Moreover, electricity is provided to public places. such as schools, panchayat office, health center, dispensaries, community centers, among other. And at least 10% of the households in the village are electrified. Now, hopefully, up till here, you've understood the electrification definition that has been used since October of 1997, wherein a village is deemed electrified if the basic infrastructure, such as distribution transformer and distribution lines, are in place in the locality. Moreover, electricity is provided to public places such as schools, panchayat offices, community centers, among other. And lastly, at least 10% of the household in the village is electrified. Now, the Government of India in September of 2017 launched the Pradhan Mantri Sahaj Bijli Har Ghar Yojana or Saubhagya, which is aimed at covering last mile connectivity of taking electricity to the household level, wherein the Saubhagya scheme defines the electrification of a household as including a service line cable, energy meter, and single point wiring. Now, hopefully, up till here, you've also understood that the Government of India in September of 2017 launched the Saubhagya scheme or the Pradhan Mantri Sahaj Bijli Har Ghar Yojana, which is aimed at covering last mile connectivity of taking electricity to household level, wherein the Saubhagya scheme defines the electrification of a household as having service line cable, energy meter, and single point wiring. Now, the target for this scheme is 31st March 2019. Now, according to the Ministry of Power, household electrification in India varies from state to state from 47% to 100%, but on an average, 83% of households are electrified. So, hopefully, you have understood the electrification definition that is being currently used, and you also understand the purpose of the Saubhagya scheme. And so, now with this, we move on to the next article. Now, we've taken this article from the editorial page on page 9. Now, what is required to understand from this article is about the conceptual keyword environmental Kuznets curve. Now, what the author means from environmental Kuznets curve is that in the initial stages of economic growth, there is greater waste generation and emissions. But when a country has achieved certain level of development in the later stages, there is reduction in pollution. Now, this reduction in pollution happens because there's technological advancement in the country in the later stages of economic growth. There is also greater movement towards the services sector and greater environmental protection. Now, hopefully, up till here, you've understood the environmental Kuznets curve, wherein in the initial stages of economic growth, there is greater waste generation and emissions. However, after a particular stage in growth and subsequently in the later stages of economic growth, a start in reduction in pollution occurs, and this is because of the technological advancement in waste management, among other technological improvements in the later stages of economic growth. Secondly, there is a greater movement towards the services sector. And lastly, there is an increased environmental protection, which according to the author happens in the later stages of economic growth. And according to the author, India is on the upward movement on the environmental Kuznets curve. And for achieving sustainable development, India must move on to the later stages of economic growth. However, according to the author, India cannot wait for the later stage to tackle environmental consequences. Now, moreover, you have also understood that according to the author, India is on an upward movement on the environmental Kuznets curve. But however, according to the author, India should not wait for the later stages to tackle environmental consequences. Now, environmental Kuznets curve as a conceptual keyword becomes relevant in your UPSC mains examination in GS paper 3 in the environment section, and more specifically, environmental impact assessment. And so now with this, we move on to the next article. Now I've taken this article from page 18. Now what this article talks about is InSight and Marco. Now InSight is the first planetary mission to study the deep interiors of Mars, wherein the main purpose of study would be of Mars quakes. The second aspect that the article talks about is Mars Cube 1 or Marco. Now many satellites known as CubeSats are also being launched to test communication technologies for relaying signals from InSight to Earth. And these CubeSats would be the first time being used for interplanetary journey. Now hopefully up till here you have understood that InSight or interior exploration using seismic investigations, geodesy and heat transport would be the first planetary mission to study the deep interiors of Mars and in particular Mars quakes. Moreover, the rocket launch would also contain Mars Cube 1, which are many satellites known as CubeSat, which would test communication technology for relaying signals from InSight to Earth. and it would be the first time that CubeSat is being used for interplanetary journey. Now both Insight and Marco become relevant with regards to your upcoming prelims examination, wherein previously questions have been asked, such as the purpose of ELISA in the prelims of 2017, what is grease lightning in the prelims of 2016, and in similar terms, Insight and Mass Cube 1 or Marco become relevant with regards to the prelims examination. And so now with this, we move on to the next article. Now we've taken this article from page 18. Now what this article talks about is various species in Lake Victoria are under threat as per the report of the International Union for Conservation of Nature or IUCN. Now Lake Victoria, which is also known as Victoria Nyanza, is recognized for high level of freshwater species and endemism, which means being unique to a defined geographical location. Now Lake Victoria is also the largest lake in Africa, and it lies mainly in Tanzania and Uganda, and it borders Kenya, wherein its catchment area touches Burundi and Rwanda. Now hopefully up till here you've understood that Lake Victoria, which is also known as Victoria Nyanza, is recognized for high level of diversity of freshwater species and endemism, and Lake Victoria is also the largest lake in Africa, and it lies mainly in Tanzania, Uganda, and touches on the borders of Kenya, wherein its catchment area also touches Burundi and Rwanda. Now the reason it is in the news, because according to a report of the IUCN, 76% of endemics to Lake Victoria are at risk of extinction. Now Lake Victoria becomes relevant with regards to your UPSC Civil Service examination, wherein in the prelim section it would be placed in world geography, more specifically physical geography of the world, while in the mains examination it would be placed in GS paper 1 in the section geography of the world, and more specifically salient features of world's physical geography and in geographical features and their location. And now with this we come to an end in the analysis of today's paper. Now we move on to the question for today.